The parts of the semi-automatic pistol, we start with A is the front sight, B is the slide, C is the frame, D is the trigger guard, E is the trigger, F is the magazine release, G is the handle or the grip, H is the slide lock or the slide stop, I is the rear sight, J is the hammer, K refers to the safety catch, and L is the tang. We can then move on to the parts of the magazine. Part A is the magazine follower. The outer section here is called the magazine housing. That refers to part B. Part C refers to the witness holes or the spring inside. D is called the toe, and E is the heel of the magazine. The toe being the front, the heel being the back. The loading and unloading of the semi-automatic, we'll start with loading the magazine. We have the toe pointing to the front, cartridge is shaped the same way. So the cartridge is loaded on top of the magazine follower, and we just load the cartridges into the magazine. From there, we insert the magazine into the firearm. Once the magazine is inserted, we then pull the slide back, release the slide, which will shoot the slide forward and place the cartridge into the chamber. From there, we would place the safety catch on. To fire from here, we take the safety off. We then apply pressure to the trigger. The hammer will then strike the firing pin. The firing pin will strike the rear of the cartridge. There will be a build-up of pressure. Semi-automatics are designed on Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So because there's a force driving the bullet that way, the equal and opposite force coming back pushes the slide back automatically, ejects the cartridge. The slide shoots forward because of the recoil spring, and the next round is in the chamber. Now, that happens so fast, all you'll see is the empty case coming out. You wouldn't be able to see the slide moving with your eye. From there, when we press the trigger again, same result. Hammer hits the firing pin hits the primer, build up of pressure, the slide will come back. On your last shot, you'll note that the slide will automatically lock open. And this is now to tell you that the firearm is empty. From there, we press the magazine release button, we take the magazine out, we then check the chamber, and we declare pistol safe. There are 3 different ways of loading the semi-automatic pistol for carry purposes. Condition 1 would be, we insert a full magazine into the firearm. From there, we load around into the chamber, and we place the safety catch on. So carry condition 1, full magazine, round in the chamber, hammer cocked with the safety catch on. To fire from there, we'd simply release the safety and fire. To unload from this mode, step 1 would be safe direction. Step 2, we press the magazine release button. We take the magazine out. Step 3, safety off. Pull the slide back, eject the cartridge. Step 4, we lock the slide open by using the slide lock. Step 5, we check the chamber and we declare pistol safe. Condition 2, we insert a full magazine. From there, we load around into the chamber. We then lower the hammer gently under control. So we place the left hand on top, 2 fingers on the hammer. We control the hammer, press the trigger, slowly forward. That would be condition 2. To fire from condition 2, we could either use single action, which means cock the hammer first and then fire, or if we had a double action firearm, you could squeeze double action to fire the gun for the first shot. To unload this firearm, step 1, safe direction. Step 2, press the magazine, release, take the magazine out. Step 3, pull the slide back, eject the cartridge from the chamber. Step 4, lock the slide open. Step 5, we check the chamber and we then declare pistol safe. Condition 3, we first check there's no round in the chamber. We release the slide forward, lower the hammer gently under control, and from there we insert the magazine. So condition 3, full magazine inserted, no round in the chamber, hammer forward. To fire from here, we'd need to activate the slide to feed around into the chamber, and from there we'll be ready to fire. To unload from this mode, safe direction, magazine out, pull the slide, eject the cartridge, Lock the slide open, check the chamber, and we declare pistol safe. To demonstrate double and single action on the semi-automatic pistol, if the round is in the chamber and the hammer's forward, it would be condition 2. To fire from there, we could either fire double action. I'll show you the double action now. The hammer stays in the forward position as it is, finger on the trigger, and you'll watch that while I squeeze the trigger, the hammer comes back and then the shot will be fired. To lower the hammer again, safe direction, we control the hammer slowly forward. To fire double action again, just to simulate that, finger on the trigger, from there we squeeze the trigger and the shot will fire. Demonstrate that again. Double action, finger on the trigger, squeeze back, shot will fire. To lower again, back to condition 2. If we're going to fire single action now, single action would be cocking the hammer first and then firing. Remember, we always cock with the left thumb so that the right hand maintains control and direction. So from here, the left thumb cocks, sight on, from there we fire. To convert back to condition 2, control the hammer, gently forward. Fire single action again, the hammer's cocked, sights on, fire. Control forward, to fire single action again, cock the hammer, sights on, fire. This particular firearm does not have an external hammer. It has a striker pin, an internal striker pin. So on this firearm, you can only load this gun condition 1 or condition 3 because there is no hammer. We can't lower the hammer gently under control. With these particular firearms, be aware also that there's no external safety catch. The safety catch is generally on the trigger itself. So by pressing the trigger, the gun will fire. So generally on your striker pins, for instance on the Glock, and this being the HS2000, you'll see that the trigger, the safety catch is actually on the trigger itself. For trigger control, we came back to the principle of applying pressure to the trigger. When we place the finger on the trigger, we want the first segment of the index finger on the trigger and not the finger all the way through the trigger. By applying pressure this way, you're going to find that when the gun fires, it's going to be turned to the one side because we're placing angled pressure on the trigger. Whereas if I have my first segment of a finger on the trigger, I'm applying pressure straight back on the trigger, which will limit any sideways movement. So correct finger placement on the trigger is the first part of your index finger on the trigger, and then from there we gently apply more and more and more and more pressure until the shot is discharged. Unloading of the semi-autos, again I'll just run through it. Step 1, safe direction. Step 2, magazine out. It's very important that we take the magazine out first because on taking the magazine out, should I pull the slide back, it'll take the round out that's in the chamber, but it won't reload a round. Whereas if I keep the magazine inserted, so if I go step 1, safe direction, step 2, pull the slide, you'll see we'll eject one, but the next one is going to be fed back into the chamber. If I then take the magazine out, most people assume that this firearm is safe, and this is again where most accidents occur. So step 1, safe direction. Step 2, magazine out. Step 3, pull the slide. Step 4, lock open so that we can ensure that there's no round in the chamber. And this should apply to all firearms. On a firearm with a hammer, the hammer will be cocked with the left thumb. Obviously we don't want to cock with the right thumb because we'll be losing control and direction. We cock the hammer with the left thumb. To lower the hammer, place the left hand on top of the firearm, the thumb and the index finger on either side of the hammer. We then push the hammer down into your right hand, press the trigger, and under control, gently lower the hammer forward. You'll also note that if I just purely push the hammer to the side, press the trigger, I can actually lower the hammer pretty much under control just by applying sideways pressure. So the thinking behind this is if I have my left hand on top, thumb and index finger on either side of the hammer, not only am I pushing down, but I'm also pushing laterally to the side so that when I press the trigger, I've got absolute control over the hammer at all times. The same applies to a semi-automatic with a hammer. The left thumb would cock the hammer. To lower the hammer, left hand on top, thumb and index finger onto the hammer, push the hammer down and laterally to the side, press the trigger, and gently lower the hammer forward. On a hammerless firearm where you've got an internal striker pin, you'll see there's no hammer to physically lower. So that's the striker pin over there, and obviously there's no way we can lower that. just one word of caution on any firearm as such, whether it's got a hammer or a striker pin. Most people in the habit of identifying a safe direction, picking the gun up to the safe direction, lowering the slide and always pressing the trigger. We often see when people make their firearm safe too. Safe direction, magazine out, check the chamber, drop the slide, press the trigger. Now they get into such a habit of pressing the trigger that one day they're going to insert the magazine, load it around into the chamber, press the trigger, pa! And the gun's going to fire. And we've seen this on a number of occasions, not only in people's homes, but we've seen this on the firing range as well. So we're not in the habit of pressing triggers. If we're going to unload the firearm, safe direction, magazine out, pull the slide, eject the cartridge from the chamber. From there, lock open, check. If we're going to reholster the firearm, we again prefer lower the slide, keep the striker in the position that it's in, and holster the firearm. But don't get into the habit of always pressing the triggers, because one day you will have an accidental discharge by doing that. If you look on the firearms with hammers, again, if we've dropped the slide, we prefer lowering the hammer under control. Dry firing the firearm is just a very bad habit. For one thing, it's going to damage your firing pin by constantly dry firing. But secondly, one day, you may think that there's no round in the chamber. You press the trigger and dry fire and the gun will discharge. Stoppages on semi-automatics. The most common one that we start off with is what we call a smokestack. It's almost like a smokestack with an empty, looks like a chimney almost. The reason why this would happen is on firing, the slide has come forward and has caught the case between the chamber and the slide in the ejection port. To clear this, it's very simple. Finger away from the trigger, keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. We then hook the pinky finger over the case and we just rake it rearwards. What will happen now is that the live round was almost half into the chamber, and what it's done now is placed the round into the chamber so it's ready to fire. One reason why a semi-auto would also fail to fire is because you can see the slide is not in battery properly. So the slide is sticking back approximately 5 millimeters. There's a number of ways of clearing this. You can either hit from behind, wouldn't suggest that though. I prefer just placing the thumb behind and just push forward. And that'll place the slide back into battery and then you're ready to fire. One of the reasons why that would happen is because when you pull the slide back, you need to let it go and allow the slide to go forward on its own in momentum. But if you pull the slide back and help the slide forward with the hand by slowly pushing forward, that kind of stoppage will occur. Other reasons why the gun would fail to fire. Obviously, if the safety catch is on the on position and you press the trigger, the gun would not fire. If for some reason the magazine wasn't inserted properly into the firearm, obviously on cycling the slide, no round would go into the chamber. On pressing the trigger, the gun wouldn't fire. Another reason why the semi-auto would fail to fire is on a single action firearm, for instance. If the hammer was in the forward position, if you tried to squeeze a double action, it wouldn't fire. On this particular firearm, if the hammer's in the forward position and I press the trigger, you'll see that it'll fire. And obviously from here I could also fire a single action, which means cock the hammer and then fire. The other reasons why it would fail to fire is obviously if we have a soft strike or if we have a misfire. The next common stoppage on a semi-auto is what we call a stovepipe. A stovepipe is where the sliders try to come forward and it's actually pushed the case or the cartridge back into the magazine. So the cartridge is sitting below the slide and it hasn't been able to push it into the chamber. One of the reasons for this would be a soft magazine spring. Obviously carrying magazines completely loaded or fully loaded for long periods of time will actually weaken the spring. To clear this malfunction now, we maintain the muzzle in a safe direction, finger away from the trigger. You'll note if I just pull the slide back just a fraction, it'll pop the case up. And if you let go, it'll feed the round into the chamber. If you check now, you'll see that the cartridge is in the chamber. It's now ready to fire. With a stovepipe, it's important just to pull the slide back just a fraction to allow the cartridge to move into position to go into the chamber. If you pull it all the way back, what's going to happen is you're going to have 2 rounds going into the chamber at the same time. So to prevent that, don't pull the slide all the way back. Just pull it back a fraction till you hear a clicking sound and then release forward. If you've now pulled all the way back and the gun is stopped as it has now, the only way to clear this stoppage, or one of the quickest ways to clear this stoppage, is to firstly lock the slide open, remove the magazine just a fraction. So you'll see I've only taken the magazine out just a fraction. You then drop the slide, that'll feed the round into the chamber, magazine back in, and the gun's ready to fire. You'll see the cartridge is placed in the chamber. To simulate a stoppage drill in your immediate action drill, what we'll simulate on the range is, should you fire the shot on the range and the gun does not fire, your immediate action is finger away from the trigger, muzzle pointed in a safe direction. On the range, we wait 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, we tap the magazine to ensure the magazine's in properly. We then rack the slide, activate it quickly to feed the next round into the chamber, and from there we're ready to fire. Now, stoppage operational, which means you're in the street or in a situation where someone's firing at you. Should the gun experience a stoppage, we immediately tap and rack and then we assess. So the gun goes click, we immediately tap, rack and assess to see if we need to continue firing or if the attack has stopped. But we're not going to wait 5 seconds. The only time we wait 5 seconds is on the shooting range, and that's just a safety period in case we have a hang fire. But in the street or operational, it would be immediately tap and rack and assess. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. But still safe.